And the website is
All right, we are on the air. This is Dr. Kat Schreier, watercitizen.com. And I'm here today. We're here for another edition of The Water Show. We're delighted to be able to talk to you today about how to pick a water charity. We've got the airtime right now is 4 o'clock at 4/18. Oh, sorry, at March the 18th. Right before World Water Day, March 22nd. And this is a time of year, you know, getting into March and April, when a lot of water-related charities, hydrophilanthropy is sometimes a word used for it, are very active in terms of reaching out to their tribes and looking for additional support and talking about the work that they're going to be doing over the course of the year. And the questions come up of how do people look for a charity, or how do people evaluate a charity if they are approached by one? You know, I mean, it can mean everything from giving your own personal time, talent, and treasure and trust. That's also a big part of it. Of who are the organizations that you affiliate with personally? Who do you listen to when making decisions? Who do you want to support? And how do you know that it's an organization? There have been stories in the news of different organizations that collected money and didn't work out. And also really thinking about putting your own time into different water charities, whether it's at the local level or charities that work around the world. We have with us two very special guests today. We're really excited about this. One is from one of my favorite organizations called the Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology. Olivier Mills has been with them for quite some time. He's going to tell us a little more about his experience. I think all of the staff over there at some point have been out in the field doing their tremendous work, which is really on the training side and capacity building for villages, with not being married to any particular technology. So they do some really great testing of different technologies related to water. And also with us today is Eliana Gilad, who is one of the first of a team of a group of 100 women around the world who have committed to raising money for 1 million people to get clean water. And that's called the Waterbearers initiative, working with a nonprofit called Waves for Water, which has been doing some really tremendous work. And in fact, the founders of Waterbearers are, I believe they're still with those folks right now. Is that true, Ileana?
Yeah, they're in the Amazon right now delivering some of the water filters. It's going very well.
So we've been getting updates on that. So of course, there's all sorts of charities. And in fact, I should mention that just this week, we got our affiliation with United Charitable as a program under United Charitable, which is a 501c3 public charity. So we're making a transition for Water Citizen itself, and so we'll be taking some different approaches as we go forward. But getting back to our topic, Olivia, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with CAWST and what people can know about the kind of work that you guys do? A little bit of history.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. It's really a pleasure to be on this show. I'm really excited to chat about this topic, which is in the mind of many, and a lot of the organizations we work with, also want to know what people think about them and how they can get more support in the actions they do. So for myself, I've been with CAWST for 8 years now, and CAWST is how we pronounce the acronym, by the way. Some people will call it CAWST or something else, but the proper way is CAWST. So we focus on training and technical support. So we don't actually distribute technology per se around water treatment. We actually train others to do it. And that's something that attracted me 8 years ago, because I spent most of my time in Africa, on projects, delivering water solutions. And one of the biggest gaps that I had seen was the lack of skill and knowledge that resided locally to sustain those technologies and make sure they continue working. And so that's really what attracted me to join this organization. And we are somewhat unique in what we do. and hopefully complementary, because there is still a big gap in knowledge and skills around.
And really, it was, and I used to live up in Calgary, where CAWST is based, and founded by a former oil company executive who as I remember the story, Camille Dow Baker, her kids kind of guilted her into. She was trying to lecture her kids about, stop complaining about the world. If you're not happy about things, go do something about it. They're like, Mom, what are you doing about it? So she sort of went back to school for a master's in sustainable development. Is that right?
Yeah, no, she did. She did a master's, and it started off actually with the idea that if you can disseminate knowledge about certain technologies, and she picked one in particular, but now we really cover multiple technologies. And in that case, it was the biosand filter, and looked at how you could make a simple technology available in the hands of communities to give them the power to treat their water and therefore have better health. And that was the theory.
It was more than just doing, actually, managing the filter that somebody else brought in. They were actually building it. They were developing little microeconomies around who was selling them, who was, how they managed trades of labor for your own filter kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements too. I think sometimes we simplify the challenge and we think, well, if you just provide a technology, it's good enough. I think the technology is one short part of the puzzle. A lot resides in how you train the users. How do you make sure that, there's consistent and continued use of that technology by the user? And that's all part of the bigger picture on success when we look at helping people access technologies to treat drinking water.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit, how CAWST really branched out to becoming sort of this technology neutral or testing all sorts of technologies. There's really quite a great research capacity up there.
No, it is. I mean, we've grown a lot, and our end goal is to support what we call our clients, and our client could be a small, nonprofit organization in the community. It could be a large international non-governmental organization. It could be a government. And we've always had that focus to help those organizations implement solutions locally. So we started off in a few countries, 2 or 3 countries. Now we've got impact in over 170 countries. We work with nearly 1,000 organizations. And that's actually given us a lot of visibility on what's going on the ground. And that helps us understand. I always take this one example where they'll focus on, I'll hear from a client, let's take Haiti, for example, not to name anyone, but they'll say, oh, those filters don't work. They'll say, no, ceramic filters or whatever. They'll pick a name, basically. And it's often related to their own single experience in implementing that technology, when there's much more about it. And you can find that there are some technologies that will apply in some contexts, but not in others. And what we're here to do is to help people understand what are the questions you need to ask when you look at implementing a technology. And we've learned that working with so many different kinds of organizations. Take a ceramic filter, a membrane filter. We've seen it implemented 20 ways to Sunday, and it helps us understand what are the elements that make it work or make it not work. And sometimes it is the actual technology, but sometimes it's how you implement it. And so that's really our role, is to make that learning available to more organizations, so not everyone is learning over and over again the same mistakes. And that's our focus, and that's always been that way. And I guess the difference now is, as we've grown, we've got more and more visibility around what's being implemented. And there's new technologies every single day on water treatment. I mean, we get requests.
So walk us through a little bit. What are some of the questions that, and I guess this is more questions from the perspective of a charity that is considering implementing, or an agency that is considering implementing, or a locality, a town, a village that's considered implementing a different charity or different technology. So what kind of questions would they want to?
Well, the first reflex is often, and you'll find this out there, and we don't like that approach, which is the advantages and disadvantages of a technology. So instead of saying, instead of giving those, what we do is we provide the criteria. So what are the questions you need to ask? And so some of them would be cost, just simply cost. The cost of the technology, the willingness to pay, the ability to pay if it's needed by the community, the members, the households. Because in this particular case, we are talking about household treatment solutions, which can be used in schools and clinics, just to clarify the scope here. And so, one of it is cost, usability, availability. Is there a supply chain? Is this technology require continuous, for example, take ceramic pot filters, the pot can last 1 to 2 years. once that's broken, where can they find an upgrade? Or if it's chlorine-based, or if there is some sort of consumable, what is the supply chain for that? So the availability is important. There are other elements purely contextual, like the biosand filter, which is a concrete filter, can be very heavy. That's not going to work in highly remote areas where you have to carry it up the hill in, Central America or in some sort of mountainous areas of Nepal. And so we might look at other types of technologies. Those would be some of the criteria around it. Local history of use, like have they used it before? If it's chlorine-based, is that community used to drinking chlorine? Some places like in Ethiopia, in some rural Ethiopian areas, if it doesn't taste like chlorine, they're scared because they got so conditioned on chlorine means good. In other areas, the chlorine taste just pushes people away completely. So again, how is the in terms of the suitability for the local population? Those are some of the criteria we would guide our clients on.
Now, there's been quite a lot of work from groups like Water for People and some of the hydrophilanthropy faculty and student experiential learning type programs through universities, looking at not just the technology but also the approach and the cultural, sociological considerations of one of the stories that I was thinking of is the town where drinking water was supplied to the homes, and the women didn't want to use it because they liked going to the well and getting away from their husbands, and but how to approach understand the culture that has surrounded water in a given area, in a given community, and how to integrate the community members in their own decision making and their own testing of the technology. I've been racking my brain for the name of the faculty member who had I think he used to be at Northwestern. He was an award winner for National Groundwater Association. If anyone sees this and can email me, I would love to remember his name. But that they were talking about taking these groundwater meters and having the local kids just bang at them with rocks and throw them against the wall and do whatever they could to destroy them to try to come up
with durability,
technology, but really incorporating the local population in being part of that process.
Right. Well, and for us, I think again part of our approach to who do we work with, because for us, we subsidize our services, we train people. Sometimes they pay, sometimes they don't. And for us, it's important that they have impact. So actually, the people we choose to train is very important because we measure our success based on their impact. So what we found that has worked when we work with organizations who are implementing locally is how much have they been around? How much do they truly understand what's going on? There's a lot of, I think, good intentions around wanting to bring water solutions in a location, but unless you can truly partner or be with an organization or a group of people individually, locally, very locally, the probability of success could be limited because there's just some inherent realities that you cannot learn by being there for a month or two. You've got to be ingrained in that. And so part of our sort of motto is really making the knowledge and skills reside locally is absolutely critical to the sustainability of the impact of something. And I think that goes to the question when you look at implementing solutions is how long. Part of the criteria could be, well, yeah, we distributed 5 filters or 5,000 filters, but can I go back in a year and see if it's still working? How many people ask that question? Right. And our experience is that organizations who've been around for a while and who are there to stay have been most successful in that sustainability, because it doesn't just mean distributing a technology, it means working with local users to understand how to maintain and to use the technology.
Yeah. Now, and there's really two sides to these charitable organizations or to these charitable efforts. And one is actually the implementation side of actually figuring out what technology to use, making the arrangements for the local country, and local partners and getting in there and implementing. But there's also how to come up with the money for it and how to not just the money, but the champions. And that, Leanne, if you want to say hello and let us know you're here. Can you still hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Leanne's camera didn't work.
Yeah, I can. really, really enjoyed.
Oops.
Can you
It's
hear
a
me?
little choppy. It's a little choppy. If you want to get
Yeah.
close as
How about now?
possible
Is that
to,
okay?
yep. So, okay.
Great.
If you can let us know, so tell us a bit about how you got involved with Waterbearers and I guess we can both sort of share what we know of the founding of Waterbearers and how that all came about.
Sure, sure. I became involved with Waterbearers. I've known Sprite. Sprite is a dear friend of mine. We met 10 years ago when she was working on another project, Feed 333, with a goal of feeding 33 million in 30 days, or 3 million in 33 days. And we got to, I think, 1.7, and I was part of that project. And it went very, very well. And we became very nicely connected and developed a friendship over the years. And so on a telephone conversation or Skype, one of these internet connections, she spoke to me about her idea with the water bearers. She said, I think it would be really great because of the aspect of women, ancient wisdom and the ancient feminine cultures. And so I love that you spoke about the wells.
Yeah.
When she said, I said, I'm in, I'm yes. And then there were a few months that, there wasn't the organization. And she spoke to me of the idea at its incubation stage. And the moment I heard it, I got goosebumps. And that's really the point when the issue of
Yeah, go ahead.
feminine leadership and trusting. That you were both discussing from the physical manifestation, from the implementation point. I find it really fascinating because I approach it from the incubation point and from the people leadership and the cultural aspect and the sustainability from the actual how is the community going to use it and respecting and honoring and learning from what these ancient cultures really have to offer us in the modern world today. I think it's such a fabulous opportunity that we have in the world with our physical technology we have in the West and the ancient technologies that are still, they're disappearing, but they are still there in the Eastern world.
Oh, I think the sound just cut out again.
Did I answer your question?
I think,
Can you hear me?
Got the gist of it. If you can find I don't know if you can get a little closer to your modem or anything that, if that might help.
It's so funny because it was just fine until we started speaking. I was hearing you fine, but I trust that. I trust that.
Absolutely, we got the talking about the connection of women and the story as I've heard it related by Sprite and Jane, who her partner on this, who filmmaker and producer, and is that they both have been very much impacted by having gone to various parts of the world and recognizing the role of women in ensuring that there's clean, available water in the household, and so many of the organizations in that delivery side, and folks like Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel Prize winner, also does his the originator of the concept of these microloans. Worked with women that once women within a community were economically stable and had some of those basic needs met for themselves and for their families, so that they could spend time on other things besides just trying to find water and basic needs. But I think this is really the first effort, and this is one of the things that sort of drew me to the Waterbearers, is that the people who are champions of it are themselves women. And I mean, it often tends to happen that that the leadership in a lot of these organizations that are doing the fundraising are women, but in this case, it
Well,
was deliberately looking for women leaders to champion the fundraising efforts and build teams and that sort of thing.
yeah, what I find really interesting when I was listening to the both of you speaking, the aspect of
Sorry,
you were
you're cutting in
speaking
and out.
about what
What
CAWST
might
does.
work, Elena, if you want to type your questions or type your responses in the bottom, and then I can.
I'm much better verbally than I am. Can you hear
It
me
is kind of
now?
cutting it out. So let me. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, better work
Yeah.
this way. This is better.
Oh, yeah. Would you? Yes. Okay.
Okay. I just turned towards the window,
There you go. Okay.
which is great. That's the benefit of not having the camera. If we had the camera, it would not be good against the window, but
Great.
for the reception, it's wonderful. So what I wanted to say is that, wait, you're cutting. I see you're frozen again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You're cutting.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear? So we're cutting in and out again.
I hear. Yes, I hear you. Well, that's part of feminine leadership. Isn't that just what happens with the technologies, that you think everything goes just fine, you get it all planned out, and then you get into you get to the local place and you're with the organizers, and it is never what you think it was going to be, and it never flows smoothly like the water. And that is so much the importance of why feminine technology and feminine leadership and feminine wisdom and feminine voice is so important in this, because this advancement of our new technologies that are so important, that can solve so many of our problems, have absolutely that the humans who have developed the modern technologies have so much to learn about the human ancient technology. It's critical. You cannot have one without the other, because what good is all of this technology and bringing it to places that are in need of it when there's no understanding of the way in which those people live? It's critical, and that organic and holistic picture needs to be taken into consideration. And I found it really wonderful to listen to the both of you discussing that very thing. And where I'm coming from, where I've seen this so much over the last 25 years, is that I lived for 20 plus years in Israel, where and this ancient feminine wisdom and healing music institute, what does that have to do with water? Well, actually everything. When we look at the wider, broader perspective of leadership, because in pre-biblical times, we're talking about thousands of years ago, the notion of, the use of sound and rhythm were used as natural healing, transformation, and feminine leadership tools. And I've spent the last 25 years and 60,000 plus hours dedicated to this. That's what brought me to Israel and what I was doing there. And those who practice this, their names are, for example, the prophetess Miriam, who is Moses' sister. Her name actually means from the waters. Water was such a fundamental aspect of our worldview. And it's a difficult thing to speak of, because we live in a cognitive world. And, we live, for the last 3,000 years, we've lived according to a masculine worldview. I'm not talking about men, women. I'm talking, masculine is cognitive, is intellectual. And that's been so important. It's enabled us to come up with these fabulous technologies. And a feminine worldview is where they're, more of the visceral and the receptive, where there are many levels of reality that exist at the same time, like Mother Nature, that's cyclical, and water is very much a part of that. And what does that have to do with fundraising? Like, God, is that bizarre? No, They don't connect. Yes, they do. Where I find they can, the subject of this, how to pick a water system, how to pick a water charity. Well, all right, so you look at all of these different charities. There, there are many, many to choose from. And bottom line is, how do you know who to trust, right?
Yeah,
that was discussed as well.
Relationships are huge.
And
personal relationships.
And the reason you asked me, how am I involved in this? How did I get involved? I trust Sprite.
And Sprite trust
because
water.
of my yes, and because I have experience working with her, and because over a period of time, that's been discussed here as well, there's been a relationship that's developed, because I have many, 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 many years of working in various venues, from the United Nations, in working with different groups or implementing how, on the intercultural side. Prior to this work, my focus was in intercultural work and working with different cultural groups and countries to work together, to have clear communication that would facilitate whatever goal they were working towards.
And really, there's communications skills. On the one hand, it can seem like fluff. The money's got to go into the work. The money's got to go into the technology and getting these systems out in the ground. And anything else is just kind of administrative overhead sort of stuff. But without communicating what is being done, without communicating with partners, without communicating with major donors, without communicating with donors in general, with letting people know what's going on, without reaching out to new donors, these projects don't happen. So
yeah, and what you were and what you were discussing about the women in the women who said, well, great, but forget it. We're not going to use it because we want to go to the well. That's where we have our freedom of expression. That's where we connect. That's where, there's so many other needs that are beyond just the physical drinking water that we in the West, we don't appreciate because we live very functional lives. And there's a fabulous, two things come to mind. One, there have been many groups that I've presented to in Israel, African groups, and from third world countries, many who come to Israel to learn about use of water, effective use of water, because there's so little water. There's such a drought, forever in Israel that the technology is quite advanced, and many people come from third world countries to learn about the technology. And what's beautiful is that when they come, then there's then you get to learn about the culture and how that impacts the actual implementation of the technology, because it's not just about the technology. And because of this, we don't ever hear about this in the West, and certainly not in the United States, about these aspects of life there. We only hear about the political stuff. But there are so many different realities there that are quite constructive and positive. One of which is that the balance of the technology and the cultural aspect are able to meet because of the need of the water. And a few years back, I've just been back in the States for a year and a half. But a few years back in a film festival, there's a fabulous a Moroccan film that's called Love and Water. I don't know what the translation in English will be, but it really addresses this issue. And if you have a chance to see it, get it. I've seen it several times. It's about a village in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. There's no water, no electricity, and the women, they go to the well to get the water, and many of the unborn babies die because it's physically very, very hard work. And they have asked the men to go into the city, to find some kind of infrastructure or ways to get water without the women having, it's like, well, we're in modern times, let's move forward. And the men just sit around and they don't do anything. And it's really a story about modernity and these traditional ways. And they're in the bath together in the water. And the young woman who has just married the progressive son says, well, you women, you've lost so many kids. Why are we going to the well? We should really make it a point to move forward. And they just don't, they're not open to her. And she says, I have an idea. I know how we can get the water. She says, we'll have a protest. We won't make love to our husbands until they move forward, because there it's only the men who do things. And it's a comedy and it's a drama. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. And then the Western tourists come, to the picturesque place, and they hear the women singing. But what are the women in Arabic singing? Our husbands don't do anything. We need water. We need to move forward. They don't give a flying hoot. And, and the Westerners are like, oh, isn't this beautiful? Because they have no clue what's going on. They think they're so smart, coming to help the back, quote unquote, backwards people. Right, and it's like, how arrogant, and we have so much arrogance. And I don't mean to judge that either, because it's just, they're two sides of, an opposite spectrum. And I think what we're called to today in our world with the situations that we're facing is that it gives us an opportunity to really come together, on both sides, on the traditional sides to open to receive the technology, to learn of the technology, to gain through the technology, and from our Western side to open up and to gain from the traditional ways that we have not appreciated in the past, that can really help us with where our society's falling apart.
You raise an interesting point about your reference to the film, because one of the things that we're working on right now is coverage. And I don't know.
Is what? Sorry, I didn't hear you say that. You're breaking up now.
All right. I think I'm going to mute you out for a second, because I think you've got your another screen open, so we've got an echo. But you raised a point about film fest, about film and the use of film to capture stories, because. When we started this talking about how to pick a water charity, and there's different technologies, and you can get different reports, and criteria and that sort of thing. But these stories are often what captures the imagination, and decisions about something like, especially if it's not which charity am I going to go with to a foreign country to do some work on the ground. If it's just a matter of, well, who am I going to write a check to? Usually it's a story that's going to make the difference there. I guess one of the things that I had learned in writing technical reports as an engineering consultant was to not just have a whole list of stats and lab results, but to actually tell the story of the site and tell the story of what was going on there. So I wanted to get back, Olivia, I wanted to get back to you and talk a little bit about, again, where can people get this kind of information? Where do they find out? What, and should it, when does it get to the point where somebody should be concerned and just not, do they just not give money at all and say, well, I looked online and therefore I did my scientific research and looked at somebody's website, or, at what point do you say, well, this is an organization that's doing some good. Let's go ahead and support it.
I mean, going back to a very good comment by Eliana around, it ends up being trust to an individual that you can align with. I think 90%, or I won't give any stats, but vast majority in our own experience as an organization, another organization, it ends up being you trust an individual, and that trust results into your investment. Especially for newer organizations that might not have impact that they can show, we tend to trust someone very well, and they say it's a good cause. Well, you trust them, so for you then believe it's a good cause. And I think that's an important part of, and because you are investing yourself into something, and it might not just be money, it could be intention, and it could be support in terms of volunteering or anything. So trust is absolutely critical, and it can be a good thing, I think. And going back to your messaging, sometimes it is important to take your own analysis on a situation, and not just rely on that single relationship, because things can get blown up, and we see it. And I think the whole reason there's been so much movement around wanting to support the water cause globally is the recognition that there's something wrong, and there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of will, and there can be a lot of buzz around a certain approach, but is it truly the right approach? Is that approach sustainable? So there needs to be some, taking a step back and looking at, well, what is the bottom line? What is more important? And for us, and in our experience, and again, my own personal experience would be, is there evidence that their action is sustained? It's not about just that one moment everyone gets happy. There's a new well, there's a new X, there's whatever. What happens after that? We tend to be, especially in society today, it's sort of short-term gratification. It's instant gratification. We get involved in a cause, and we get involved sometimes during the moment of donation or during the moment of the event when we announce the results. I always recommend whoever asks me about who should I support, it's a journey that you want to be part of, and for us, the supporters that have come along our journey is important for us, that they walk with us as we have sustained impact. And that can apply, I think, to any organization, because there's a lot of projects that actually end up having a negative impact. There's initiatives that shouldn't have happened because once they cap the wells and they put hand pumps, the hand pumps break down, and the well is capped, the hand pump's broken, then they end up going to the ditch and drinking water that impacts their health and their children. So bottom line, it is, I think, impact. So criteria is impact. But then how do they measure impact? And everyone measures impact differently. Some might argue that impact is we've built 200 wells or we've distributed 5,000 filters. That is not impact. Impact is, sustained use and sustained access to safe drinking water, and the result on health, livelihood, empowerment. And we've seen it, and giving the example of, we were talking about providing a household with the ability to treat the water. The women in that household who generally have the role in managing the health of everyone and in getting the water, is when she understands that she can take control over the health of their kids. And I've seen this personally in Haiti, training women in how to build filters, and then understanding is like, why was their sick? Why is their kid sick? Why is their kids keep having diarrhea? Why did she lose 3 kids in the last couple of years? Her understanding, wow, I can actually control that. That goes way beyond water. That, you know, that empowers an individual to have control over her life and not just the health of herself and her children. So going back to the question, you know, the criteria is, number one, I would argue, is impact. Can you assess impact of the organization you're thinking about supporting in any way? And how do they define impact? What is their metric? Is it truly, does it have that component of sustainability in it in terms of continued access to safe drinking water for the population?
We look in terms of, I think, and I think we get your a second screen open on your end. Here, I'm gonna have to mute you again. Sorry, I was getting an echo there, but looking at understanding that impact and you know, this idea behind communications, both in terms of, I mean, whose story do we get here? Is it the organization that goes out there that then picks which case studies they provide information on? And the same thing for how the people who are in the administrative end of these charities are getting the information out to potential donors. Has there been any, with the advent of more availability of cell phones around the globe, that there's more cell phones than there are cars, or more cell phones than there are water bottles? I don't know. Are people who are the end users, are they actually getting a chance to communicate directly? And, you had the old thing with the kids who would write a letter to the sponsor families. I mean, are people able to actually directly communicate what they're getting out of this and not just going through the organization?
No, and I think that's what's so exciting about the current era of information. And there's a lot of initiatives that we've seen out there where what we call the end user, the beneficiary, call it whatever you want, is able to express and is connected. I mean, the number of our clients in the remote areas that are on Facebook are crazy. They use Facebook as a professional tool to ask us technical questions, which is quite odd, but we use it. We launched webinars, last year, and when we tried a French one, we thought we'd get mostly France, Belgium, etc., maybe Quebec. We ended up getting people from Burkina Faso on the live connection. Found some, cyber cafe, and we're connected and engaging. We would never engage with those organizations normally. So, and that goes down all the way to the user. And they have been, they've done a lot of effort. The most recent ones I've heard are around the ability for communities to report on broken hand pumps through text messages, etc. And at least the ability to say, like, it's not working here, and having that data centralized to allow whoever's supporting that that area can intervene. And so there's more and more we're finding the ability for end users to voice up their concerns or some of the challenges they face. I think it's completely underutilized still, and having a voice is one thing and listening to it is another. And part of the challenge that we have now is have enough listeners to know, truly what's going on. There's still a lot of top-down, not to stereotype sort of that concept, but there's still a lot of top-down decisions in terms of going back to a comment by Eliana around, I think it was ego, or there was another term used, but that we think we know what's right. And that there's still a lot of that out there. Now, the irony of that one I found even is that you can find even, my experience in, I think it was Zambia, is working with some of the engineers, the urban engineers in Zambia, Uganda, wrong country. It was in Uganda. The urban engineers, their ability to actually truly understand even what happens in rural Uganda was not there. So it's not just this Western, developing country interface. Yeah. It can happen at a very local level too. And even having central governments being disconnected to what's happening in rural areas is crazy. When we look at, many countries are fairly centralized, like Haiti and Port-au-Prince. It's all about being in Port-au-Prince, and what happens in the rural areas, much disconnected. And a lot of African countries are still quite disconnected to what's happening in the rural areas. So, slightly divergent from the original.
Well, and of course, the people who are doing this often are engineers or engineers who are wonderful at communications in any in any country. You go back to the book, The Ugly American. which referred to the diplomat who was, went into Southeast Asia. The book that really changed the way we do diplomacy in the U.S. Of having someone go, have some cushy assignment in the embassy while not really understanding what's going on locally. But there was reference to an engineer that went out and actually connected with the local bike mechanic, and they came up with this bicycle-centered water pump. But in both cases, often the people who are focusing on, how does this thing work, and well, what's this do over here, don't necessarily have the best social skills in any technology. So you have that you've got the East-West, you've got the urban-rural, you've got the professional and upper class, lower class. Within the country, you also have that right brain, left brain type thinking, that engineer and the promoter, the marketer, the communications person. That is someone who kind of switches brains. It has worked in both worlds. It's really interesting. I'm looking at Eliana's points. I turned off her mic. I'm going to see if we can get her back on without the echo to come back in. But she's saying, through the technology, the end user and the donor can connect. This is an important element tool. Let me see if we can get her back on. Eliana, how's your sound? Go ahead and say something.
Yeah, well, on my side it was fine. Are you okay on your end?
We can hear you a little choppy, but I'll try. But I don't have the echo this time, so.
Yeah. On my end it's fine if it's okay on your end. I love what you're speaking about, the issue of the social aspect and the sustainability and the continuity. There's two things that came up. One, really strikingly, with regards to engineers, and the second with regards to women. That before you said that you noticed that in the water technology, they're mostly women, or in the donor space, women. And I find that, and I'm wondering whether you do. This is my experience, but I'm really curious about both of your experiences, that on the issue of trust and deciding where to go or what to do, that on the aspect of the technological things and the achievement, that we're very, very strong, but there's a breakdown between what we reflect on the outside and then this kind of imposter syndrome, that deep down inside you don't trust yourself, that you think, oh my God, if people really knew, if they really knew how I'm feeling, oh God, I wouldn't even be here. And so that causes a lot of disconnect, because there's the basic personal disconnect. Does it make sense what I'm talking about?
There's a lot of self-trust and self-confidence that goes into both promotion, marketing, sales, that you cannot connect with someone if you don't believe in it yourself. And in research and technology, that is a form of sales also. Is being able to say, yes, I have tested it. Yes, it's worked in these cases. And there's so much that is built into the research community of not making any absolute promises, not saying absolutely this is going to work for 100 years and everything. And that there is that that's kind of where this show came from. Is I had put out something about the Waterbearers, and somebody immediately said, no, they can't say that it's 50 years or 100 years or 100 people or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, whatever, because this research study said this, and this research, what point do you say, look, we trusted it's going to make a positive difference. We trusted it's going to have a positive impact.
And that, you're really hitting the nail on the head right now. Again, this issue of the trust, that, there's a point where the research or the technology only goes so far. And then, there's the human aspect, or, the human aspect or the social aspect or whatever you want, that part that's not measurable. where I come from, where I've learned that from, is from the opposite extreme of intuitively knowing and then going into the scientific world and the medical world to test out these ancient ways. Going, well, if I'm full of caca, well, then I'll return to the States. I won't ask any more questions. And if there's really something to this, well, then the science will prove it out. And boy, did it prove it out. But it was clear before the science ever came. It's that the science and medical research was an important aspect from that marketing side, because how we live in the modern world, if we don't, we don't see the results, we don't trust it. But when you have that, then it can open the door to taking another step forward, and that's one thing. And the second thing is with regards to women in particular.
Sorry, we're cutting it out again. But yeah, absolutely. There's the trust in the technology. There's a trust in the relationships with an individual. Often that's why organizations team up with celebrities, that people feel they know them from seeing them on film and they trust them. There's trust that we can do some good in the world.
And I think that's why that's the importance of the feminine leadership. And when I say feminine leadership, I really don't even mean necessarily women. It's just that in women it's more pronounced. But the helpfulness of that is that there is more of a balance of intellect and visceral.
And that's something,
and that,
if I can comment,
as we connect.
Go ahead.
No, just that on that note, we face it every day. We face organizations who look for our support to, they're interested in engaging in a community and supporting them by providing safe drinking water, or an existing in-country organization wants to take action. And the balance as well in the research, we have a small research department, or research learning department, we call it, because we don't like doing too much of the research. We let the universities do it. The balance we have around what we, the introduction of great literature, or even just experiential learning that we have from our clients, and try and bring that up and bring it up to the researchers and say, yes, it's not a controlled, it's not a controlled study, but there's valid elements in this. And also there is also a balance between, well, what is good enough, or what is too much, and is it okay to distribute technologies that don't treat water? Like technically there isn't, it's not working. Is that ethical? Is that something that we can support? That needs to be asked too. And it's not just about good intention, or it's not just about, what I'm saying is sort of that there is always going to be that balance between making sure we are looking at what would be more of the technical criteria, and ensuring that we are actually doing what we say we're doing, with the idea that, saying to, for example, in Bangladesh, use a sari cloth, fold it 7 times. It's not going to give you 99% reduction in bacteria, but it's going to reduce cholera by 50%. Do it. Why would we ever stop teaching that? It's not the perfect solution. It's not a membrane filter or whatever, but you can teach it today. They can act on it within 10 seconds. So teach it. And so that might not comply with Cambodian standards or Bangladeshi standards of drinking water, but it will have an impact. So how do you balance those, that guidance in that direction around how, between the purely technical and the and having a positive impact?
Yeah.
Right, or that it's that progress.
There was a film last night here at the Environmental Film Fest called "Good Things Await," with a farmer who was doing biodynamics in the Netherlands. In Denmark, and you sort of the gist of the film was showing these techniques. He was really bonding with the animals and understanding that the cosmic connection between the sun and the planets and the compost and the worms and the work that the worms are doing in creating the compost that went into the plants, that went into the cows, and having having these inspectors come in and, started going down this checklist and pressing charges and whether he was going to lose his organic farming license and just, where, people come in and do a spot check and just, check for these different criteria. How do we capture these stories? How do we get these stories? How do we make these connections that, that's part of what we're trying to do here with Water Citizen and things like, the news site of capturing stories and here with the show of, rather than having me trying to do some interpretation of what I hear other people talking about, providing a platform here where people can interact more directly. And even though Blab is in a beta format and it's an imperfect technology, it is an opportunity to bring together, me here in DC and Eliana in LA and Olivier in Calgary, to be able to all come together. And I'm hoping that Eliana is about to come back on. But that's, really that's part of the objective of this show. So let me see if I can get her back on. Olivia, did you have any parting thoughts? I don't know how much we really answered a question from somebody who was coming here today expecting to know, the perfect answer of how do I pick? All right, I've got these 5 charities. They all want my money. What am I going to do? It really wasn't about that. It was just, talking about some of the things to look at. Really even more than just your money. But if you're looking to work in this arena, what are the things?
Yeah, and I think, I do. Bottom line, I think we did. Well, I certainly felt I answered in terms of its bottom line. It is about impact and sustained impact of that organization. Do they have a track record? We talked about trust and who can we trust that, has been part of that and not ignoring that part of trust. Also looking at an organization, I think sometimes we differentiate too much between a non-profit and a for-profit, and why can't we look at a non-profit a little bit like a for-profit business and invest in it, see of it as an investment, and your return is not necessarily a product or profit, but your return is social impact. So let's look at that as well and say invest in them as they were a business and treat them like a business in what you look for in terms of bottom line. Do they have impact? How transparent are they in terms of what they communicate? Are they just telling nice, fluffy, beautiful stories of impact, or are they telling you, are they sharing their learnings with you? And that, I think, is sort of some of the criteria that I would always recommend to individuals. And then in terms of contributing, more than money, a lot of people, it's fascinating seeing how much energy, even in Calgary, or people who've never been abroad and they really want to support an organization. I think sometimes the first reflex is to want to go abroad and help locally. That can be a challenge because, as we like to say, if you're not good at it here, you won't be good at it there. And not all skills are transferable. So there's probably a ton you can do here in terms of helping a head office of an organization, or maybe talking about the issue. How many people aren't aware of the issue of water? You don't have to go there and build a well to help people get safe water. So that's sort of something I want to make sure that there is always an opportunity to help, even here at home, be it in the US, Canada, or Europe, wherever you are. You don't have to go overseas to serve.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point in that is exactly why I was so attracted to the Waterbearers, is that it wasn't just about giving us your money and then we're going to go take it somewhere else. This was giving an opportunity for people like Eliana, for people like myself, who aren't going to be traveling over there. And frankly, the money that would go into a plane ticket and the trip and the, everything else could instead be put directly into someone who's going to do some good with it, versus the role that we can have here on the home front. And Eliana, I think you agree. This has been an opportunity to be a spokesperson on behalf of the organization, to have a level of involvement that goes beyond just making a donation.
And also, what I also love about it, and why I chose to be part of it, is that it was an opportunity to be a part of something larger that's invested in the larger good, that doesn't have to do with me personally, And I'm finding that very, very helpful, very satisfying and fulfilling.
Mhm.
And that, when the daily frustrations, of whatever come up, I think about it. I go, oh my God, what are my worries compared to, somebody who doesn't have clean water to drink, even to the point of the actual fundraising, because I've sent out a lot of, with my mailing list and speaking to people, and people have all kinds of issues, like we're speaking about, who do I trust, or no, I can't, or I'm just too busy, or whatever the excuses that someone has, that I thought it would be so easy. Oh, 100, Phil, no problem, easy peasy. Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, we're all supposed to have $50 filter systems with all the studies and feasibility studies. At $50 buys a filter,
And it goes direct.
we all get right, and then we all get 100 people to buy filters. That was
the
original
original premise. I thought, great, what a wonderful thing, and that the waves for water, they go directly. I love that. Well, this is cool. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm trusting this, just given, I'm trusting my gut. I want to be part of something larger. I want to be connected with people who are attuned to making a difference. And we'll see, we'll go with the flow, we'll see what happens. And for me, I think that's the most important element here, that the growth and the expansion is not how much money, of course we've got our goals and, our technical to get the things out, 1 million by World Water Day. Yeah, that's not realistically happening at this point. But so what? That's not the point. The point is, like you were saying about in, where was it, Cambodia, or do we wait until we've got the perfect system? No, it's so fabulous. Now
We're the perfect sales pitch. We're the perfect webinar.
200,000 more
Perfect
people. Yeah,
perfect
200,000 more people. It's the progress, not the perfection. And I feel so good about that. And personally, how does it affect me? As we talk about the leadership aspect, I feel good because I'm not killing myself over it. So I'm moving forward in my own leadership, that it doesn't have to be perfect. In the past with similar things, I'd be, like with the imposter syndrome on the outside, I'd be saying, oh, it's so great. On the inside, I'd be berating myself because I committed to 100 and I've only done 20%. Oh God, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do more? And of course, I've got my own work and competing things with the never ending to-do list, but I'm not doing that. And that's the gain.
Mhm.
That I'm so, and even on this call, well, there are many other things that, are pressing on my to-do list, though I love being here. I'm learning something new. I'm connecting with people I wasn't connected with before. And you never know what comes out. It's it really is a resurgence through the water, through the dirty water. The gift is the purification of the water that impacts us both physically and spiritually and socially and communally, I believe that we're all gaining through this, and we don't know the impact of our humble meeting today, how important these humble meetings are. It's like a drop in the water that has a ripple effect, and it's the ripples that are much more important than the drop. It's not, one's not more important than the other. It's, it's a unified whole. I love that.
Thank you, Ed. I'm so glad that you're here and that you stuck with us, and with technical glitches and things like that aside. I mean, that just the value, doing this show and doing it with a platform like Blab, which is still in beta, but recognizing the value of being able to provide this platform and this communication for me to take that step of turning Water Citizen into a program under United Charitable as a public charity, 501c3, that the idea of communications about water, not just for trade publications, which is where most of them, either in mainstream press where water is covered as crisis. And that's pretty much it. If it's a crisis, there's information and it makes a good story and it's drama and it gets people attention, but then people are left hanging without, okay, now what happened? What happened later? Did anyone go back and check? Did it actually work? What happened after Deepwater Horizon? What happened after, after the tsunami? What happened after this? And the rest of the story doesn't come if it's not, if it's not profitable news. And at the other end of the stream is trade publications where people are advertising and publishing to make a sale, to make money, that there is value in providing this, I'm hoping that there is value in providing this. So if you think that there was value, please join us again. We are looking at looking at a different time slot. We may be going with Sunday evening next week with, we've been connecting with folks throughout the Environmental Film Fest in the nation's capital with some of the filmmakers, and going to be inviting them back for a best of the fest discussion to get some perspectives from these filmmakers of why they came to this, the largest environmental film fest in the world, the first one, 24 years old. This is their 24th year. As it's really been a tremendous, and the kinds of stories, everything from talking about science to talking about experiences that people have had related to nature, and with the centennial of the National Park System here in the U.S., that's National Park Service, that has been a big feature. So lots of big landscape films, but yeah. So hopefully we are providing a service here and creating impact and opportunities to build connections. And I want to thank Olivier from Calgary, from CAWST. Eliana from out in California with the Waterbearers, and all the Waterbearers who've been supportive of this program, and for everyone who couldn't be here at this time slot but is watching us on the replay at watercitizen.com/The Water Show. If you look below, you'll see a place to put your comments and be able to really keep the discussion going, as well as a button that you can click and add your name to the subscription to database so that we can connect with you and keep you informed on what's coming up. I do think there's more topics we want to explore in this arena, talking with waterpreneurs, and especially in the for-profit. Not everybody can become a nonprofit. It is quite a long haul, and not everyone wants to create a market around new technologies in developing countries. And that's been a big initiative. And the other side that we've also been talking with big corporations as well as entrepreneurs, startups, of how do you work your charity, your philanthropic activities into, integrate it with the mission of your organization, looking at things like Coca-Cola and the Nature Conservancy and the Environmental Defense Fund, and a lot of the big environmental organizations have worked very closely now with major corporations on everything from setting new standards for new technologies to just having their employees getting involved with volunteer activities. Olivia, as you said, there are all sorts of opportunities to actually get involved and to be an official charity associated with a corporation. So lots of great stuff that we can explore in this. Really appreciate everybody joining us here today and continuing to join us on the replay. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But Eliana, we can see if you can say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks a lot.